on the site is the grants, but we're going to go straight to the website. So I'll just close that down. That was just there to promote what we were doing, and we have now got the website. So when you first go to the website, you will see that there's some material there explaining how the system works in case studies. But obviously you are a subscriber, so we can go straight through. So the first area you need to be concerned about is a client profile. We'll bring up a blank profile just to start with. Now within the client profile you need to insert the name of the client or a reference number. Please remember we are using cloud technology, so if you've got concerns about your client data being in the cloud, please use a number. We do recommend that you leave the data in the system so that next year it's a lot easier to update. Also, we are in the process of finalising a upgrade of ESS BIZGrants. We hope to have that available by around the end of June. And one of the new concepts that we're introducing into version 2 is that if a new grant has been added to ESS BIZGrants since you last worked on a client that you have set up within ESS BIZGrants, that if that client is potentially eligible for any of those new grants that have been included, then you will receive a message to that effect that this client may well be entitled to apply for another grant. So that's one of the real reasons for leaving the data in the system. And the other one, of course, is it will take you 6 minutes or so to set this client up initially. Why keep on doing that every year when it will only take you 1 or 2 minutes to update the information each year? Our suggestion is that you have a policy within your firm to ensure that all business clients are processed through ESS BIZGrants. This way you will be able to monitor all of your clients, your business clients, to see whether they might be eligible for a particular grant. Sometimes it can be quite surprising, the grants that are available, and it's difficult to just compare one client to another because it can just be small subtleties like years in business, number of employees, and obviously turnover in many cases that can determine whether one small business is going to be eligible for grants as compared to another. Another thing to bear in mind is also that ESS BIZGrants has been designed for the benefit of small, medium enterprises. So we haven't included any grants for not-for-profits or charities. This product is only for small, medium enterprises. What we've attempted to do in preparing the system is to ensure that you as the accountant are in control of the information pertaining to the client. You're not sending it off to some other consultant to prepare, or you're not using some other consultant's site, which would then mean that they're in the strong position to be able to influence the SME client to have that consultancy firm undertake any further processing work, business plan work, etc., that might be forthcoming out of the particular grant. Our suggestion is that you have a good look at what your team members' productivity is at present, and if you have a younger accountant that's starting to run out of some work as you enter into June, perhaps you could have him or her sit there and set up the client profiles for your business clients, and then have someone with a bit more knowledge of the client do the final processing so that you're able to usefully utilize this period of time, which some firms find that not all of their team are busy, or as busy as what they normally are. during the stage. If that's not suitable, then our recommendation is that as you complete the financial accounts for a client in the 2013-14 work period, obviously relating to the 2012-13 financial year, that you include as part of the process the initial setting up of the client profile. Will take about 6 minutes, and then have one of your team review the possible list, the pending list as we call it, so that a decision can be made as to whether to recommend to the client that they proceed with a government application. So in the first instance, obviously we've sorted out the name. You need to decide the structure that the client is operating on. There is no doubt that the most popular entity from a government bureaucracy point of view for grants is a company, but other entities can apply and be successful in some of the grants. We want to know whether a business exports, does it import. What we have here is 20 questions. When we did our initial sample run on about 200 grants, we had over 800 questions. Today it'd be well over 1,000 questions. So obviously it was impractical to have all them getting asked at the beginning. So we selected about 20 questions which we have asked to do the initial sort to try to determine which entities might well be eligible for some of the grants. And that's the questions we're going through at present. So years operating is important in some of the state governments which have minimum operating periods. Some people have asked me what grants there are in the system for startups. Unfortunately, the answer is very few. The only ones that really come to mind are Commercialisation Australia has got a very valuable range of grants for someone who's invented or developed a new product, process or service, and they needn't have any turnover. There is a turnover limit of $10 million, but there's no stipulated minimum turnover. And possibly export market development grant. You could claim that in your first year of business if you spend over $20,000 on export market grant activities. But other than those two grants, and obviously research and development as a accelerated tax rebate, there are no other grants that readily come to mind that are there in the Commonwealth area for small medium enterprise. There are a couple within the system in some of the states, but not many. Most of the government grants now require the business to be, say, 3 years old, as Enterprise Connect do, and to establish some credibility. There's no doubt that governments are trying to pick winners. Annual turnover is important. You all know the demarcation for research and development at $20 million between the 45% rebate and a potential immediate tax payment for the benefit of the R&D rebate, or over $20 million, the 40% rebate as a part of the tax calculation, but with no opportunity of receiving any cash amount at that stage. Annual expenditure we've included because Enterprise Connect, arguably the largest grant on an individual grant basis, has this concept that a business can qualify if it achieves either a minimum turnover or minimum expenditure, which is the same amount. So for example, a manufacturing business requires a minimum turnover of $1.5 million. If the company does not achieve the turnover requirement, but it achieves the same dollar figure in expenditure, in other words $1.5 million or more, then that entity could be eligible for Enterprise Connect. There are some examples where that may have occurred. It could be where a business has undertaken very large expenditure on research and development. They may have constructed a pilot plant, or they may have spent considerable sums of money on patent attorney advice looking for a patent. So that's the reason annual expenditure is there. In version 2 of ESS BIZGrants, we're going to mention that question, but we're not going to have it highlighted as much, primarily because our research with the Enterprise Connect people has indicated that not that many businesses are qualifying under the expenditure rule. And it does cause some questions from some of our subscribers having this question about expenditure. Businesses need to be registered for GST to seek the grants which are listed in ESS BIZGrants, and if they're tax exempt they won't be able to see any grants because it will not be available to them. Are you involved in research and development? That doesn't necessarily mean they have to have spent more than $20,000 for the R&D rebate, but it could be the trigger to have a good close look at Commercialisation Australia. To have developed a new product, process or service, it will normally mean that a business has spent some money on research and development. So it's one of the links that we've built into the system to alert you as the advisor to ask the client, are they doing any development of new products, processes, or services. Just a comment on that. In my own experience, I found that at times an SME can be carrying out research and development and has not told their accountant that they're doing it. It's part of this feeling that some of the SMEs have got, that they need to guard very closely what they're doing. When I talk to some of them, I indicate to them that that's for disclosure of their invention, but they don't have to disclose their invention to their accountant to get proper advice on their structure and their tax treatment of these matters. The last question also has been causing some concern about the financial vulnerability. It's a question that's in most of the government grant applications these days, or words to that effect, but it's financial vulnerability from a government bureaucrat's point of view. They're not concerned that the debtor's days outstanding is 62 days and you've got some concerns about how the business is going. The government are more concerned that the business is in such a state that there's a liquidator or a receiver about to be appointed. Putting it bluntly, they don't want to see headlines in a newspaper which says they awarded a grant to a company and a week later the receivers were appointed. They would prefer that to occur, and you probably appreciate it's not a very good career move for a government employee to have recommended a business that falls into financial difficulties shortly thereafter. But it's not because they're having teething problems or their debtors' days outstanding is a bit high, or even that their banker's reading the Riot Act to them. It's not really meant to be that. And we are going to change the wording of that to make it a little bit clearer in version 2. So that's the information you would put into the, or answer in the first part of the client profile. We can't go any further unless we actually enter some more information, and I'm going to pick up a profile that we've already done a bit of work on. So we might pick on this one here, which I called Forbes Motel. We'll just hit edit so it goes back so you can see what we've put in. We've said this Forbes Motel's a company. It's got 17 employees, it's been operating for 8 years, got a turnover of 1.9 million, costs of 1.75. So there's nothing else adverse about them. Now, you will when you're establishing a client's profile, you'll be invited to insert the address. We had inserted that they were in Forbes and placed in the postcode of 2871. The system immediately identified that they were in the outer regional Australia area. Now, these location types are determined from the health industry maps as to where a business is located. There's been some changes of late, and we're updating the ESS BIZGrants site to reflect some of the changes. They are not making any significant difference to the grants that are currently in the system. But the real issue with someone in an outer regional area is that if a business is operating in an outer regional area and is selling 50% or more of its product to customers who are located in a remote or very remote area, then that business situated in the outer regional area, irrespective of what type of industry it's in, so long as its turnover exceeds $750,000, is able to apply to Enterprise Connect for assistance as if it was a remote located business. So it's something to bear in mind if you have clients in outer regional areas, and obviously the location is not the location of the accounting firm, it's the location of your client. And these days accountants seem to have clients all over Australia, and you could well have some in an outer regional area. And this is what I meant at the beginning when I said clients that can look very similar. You may find that there are these little points. They're in an outer regional area. They're selling more than 50% of their business income or 50% or more of their business income is being generated from businesses in remote or very remote locations. And after all, that's probably about 90% of the Australian land mass. Then, irrespective of what industry they're in, they can apply for support under Enterprise Connect so long as their turnover exceeds $750,000. You might recall that Enterprise Connect has direct assistance available for 12 industry groups, but if the business is located in a remote area, first of all, none of the industry groups apply, and secondly, the applicant doesn't have to be a company. All they need is an Australian business number, and thirdly, the turnover requirement is only $750,000. The maximum is $100 million. The financial details is just a repeat of what we've already placed in. The next question you need to answer is the business and industry profile. Now, the business potentials are determined from the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications, so they're there, so you need to click onto them. We have already decided that this is a service provider type business, it's a motel, and you also need to determine the type of industry, and we have determined in this case it's the accommodation, cafe and food services, because what we're doing with is a motel. You could have more than one business classification and more than one industry classification. If you're unsure, you can log on to the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications, and you can then search so here's the agriculture, forest and industry. They're all there, and you can go through and find them. It's a sorry, I've my apologies, I clicked the wrong button then. Just bear with me a moment, thanks. I'm having trouble with this computer now. Password. Code is there.
Your email address.
Sorry about that. I put the wrong codes in then. I'm forgetting everything. Just go back to where we were. I clicked the wrong key then and got us out of it. So that we were in the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications, and we've now come back. We can now click search and go through to the area. Now, we've been working on this before, but what we might look at, so we got these potential grants that have been open or offered to us. So we could have a remote enterprise or a tourism sector or a tourism sector group. Now, it's worth thinking about groups for a moment, and we'll have a look at that. It's probably the best way to show you. So you can click onto that and say, okay, first of all, you get the grant details. Now, this is a grant that's available for a group. So it's a number of businesses. The minimum turnover is $500,000, and the group must have a total turnover of at least $2 million. And the members need to be drawn from a limited segment of the tourist market. Tourist accommodation, attractions, businesses offering a local food and beverage tasting experience, tour operation or travel agency services. So it could be a group, so you say, okay, that's all right. Now, what can happen is that these businesses could get a grant. We'll have a look. They could get up to $20,000 each on a 50% basis. However, for the ones that have only got a turnover between $500,000 and $1 million, the grant they can get is only $10,000. So if you had 4 firms and they each between $500,000 and $1 million turnover, they would collectively receive $40,000. They would have to contribute between them $40,000, so there'd be $80,000 in a pool that could be spent literally to do activities which will improve the business performance of the group as a whole. Alternatively, of course, this company we got here has got a turnover of $1.9 million. So they'll be able to get $20,000, and depending on what the other members of the group, so if they all had turnovers in excess of $1 million, they would be able to access a maximum of $80,000 from the government, and they would have to contribute $80,000 themselves, and therefore there'd be $160,000 there to do all sorts of things. It might be a business plan, might be market research, it might be developing a corporate branding strategy, and I'm sure that some of that work, an accountancy business wanting to offer business advisory services, could do so. Then you have a grant toolkit. So what I'm showing you now is obviously is repeated for each grant within ESS BIZGrants. So if you're working through the system, this is what you're going to be looking at. If you would like to read a paper on ESS from ESS BIZTOOls on how this grant operates, then you can call it up and it's there. If you want to, you could produce this, print this paper up to show your client when you have a meeting with the client on particular grants that might be available for them. There's also a checklist for this particular grant, which is telling you how the tourism sector operates and what you might be able to spend some of the money on. Now, we then want to have a look at some additional criteria. And we've already gone through and answered this one, but does the company in the group have minimum revenue of 500,000? So you need to go through and answer the questions, and to speed the process up, we've answered them. Just bear in mind that some of the correct answers are no. So in here we've got are the individuals, companies, prime trade, retail, cafe, restaurant or takeaway food supplier. The correct answer to that is no. If you'd answered yes, and I'll just show you what happens. So at this stage it's saying that we might be eligible for this grant. If we answered, it's now saying that you've answered the wrong answer. You've answered yes to the question, which obviously should have been no, and we're now showing that you're ineligible. We went back and changed that because we made a mistake. You're going to have that you're eligible for that grant. If you wanted to apply then, if you click on apply now, and it only comes up once the eligible sign has been displayed. If you clicked on here, we would be going to the Enterprise Connect application form. So it's, in each case, the click on that, the displayed URL will take you direct to the application form for the grant. Let's go back to the results. If we go back to results and we look at potentially eligible, we've been doing some work previously on this one, and we've identified a number of grants that this client might be eligible for. We've also got the potentially ineligible. So we said they weren't we previously had a look, they weren't eligible for the continuous improvement program in the tourism industry, probably because they'd never started the project in the first place. So here is the correct up-to-date list of the potentially eligible. I think before I was still on the pending list. So you can have a look at your pending list. I was. There's your potentially eligible list, and they're the ones you want to show the client. And there's the potentially ineligible. Now, what you could do is leave them all in pending. So obviously when we started this, there was 17 odd grants coming up in pending, and you could sit down and talk to your client about it, because I've assumed in looking at this one that the client might not be interested in some of these apprenticeship grants, but perhaps they were. So you could sit there and go through it with the client, or perhaps you could do it over a telephone and just go through it with the client. You can be doing exactly what I'm doing now, and in fact running a webinar with your client if they're out of town, to determine whether they might be eligible. So we've gone back to potentially eligible, and we can then produce a report that will go to the client. Now the client's Forbes Motel. The name there would be the name of your accountancy business, the name you've entered as the licensee to use ESS BIZGrants will come up on all reports. Won't show ESS BIZTOOLS, that's obviously our name. You then get a synopsis on the grants that have been identified, and it also gives an indication as to the funding that is available for those grants. So here's the one we just identified here. We're saying the tourism sector group could be something that this client might be interested in forming a group. And in fact, if you read our ESS BIZGrants alert for last month, we had a bit of a case study on this concept of the tourism industry organisations forming a group. We had already, in a previous webinar, indicated that this business would also be eligible in its own right because it's got a turnover of $9 million, so it might have been able to get the grant. And because it was in New South Wales and they had some women working the business in a management position, they could also have been eligible for some special training programs that the New South Wales government offers for women in business. So that's the grant, and that's the final report. And that's basically how you would use ESS BIZGrants. We are updating the system all the time. Now I'm going to see if it's not too noisy. I'm going to open up all the communication. So if you've got any questions you want to ask me, and you've got a microphone on your computer, the technology people tell me you should be able to do so. So has anyone got any questions? If you can't think of any questions now, or you can't type fast enough, oh, here comes one. The question is, how much do firms typically charge for this? Good question, John. In the first instance, the 6 minutes to enter the basic profile, my suggestion is that it's absorbed into the cost of the annual accounts that in most cases is what you would probably be working on. If, however, the clients come in and particularly commissioned you to research the grants for them, well, obviously that time for establishing their profile in the first place would be part of the fee you would be billing them. The time for the more senior accountant to have a look at the pending list to make some sort of informed decision as to which grants that you think the client might be interested in. Again, if it's been done as part of the annual accounts, I think most people are just having it go onto the work in progress for the annual accounts. If you're going to have a discussion with the client face-to-face or a webinar type presentation, and you would basically charge that at the same as your normal rates. It's a consultation to assist the client to find a grant. If after you've produced the report and the client then commissions you to undertake the work, it really depends how much work you're being asked to do. All these applications do take time, and it will vary. Enterprise Connect could be half an hour to an hour. Commercialisation Australia is a very difficult two-stage application process. I consult in this area, and I charge between $5,000 and $6,000 to assist people to apply for Commercialisation Australia. We charge that up front. Most people we propose it to agree to go on with it, not all, but most do, because they've normally had a go at filling in the forms themselves and have realised they're a bit difficult. If you're then commissioned to do work as part of the government grant process, be it a business plan or reorganising the chart of accounts or human resources systems, you're going to have to prepare a quotation for that, because that is going to have to be submitted to the government agency as part of the approval process. I hope that answered the question, John. Is there any other questions? Are you all using ESS BIZGrants? I know some people have subscribed and have been saying they're going to start using it from around now. We're really advocating that the use of it be part of the annual work that you do for a client. there is a bit of an opportunity now when we look at the time of the year it is now. As I said in the presentation, if you do have some staff that aren't fully occupied, perhaps they could start doing the profiles. My recommendation is that you don't try to select who may or may not be eligible for various grants. Put them all in the system and you might be pleasantly surprised what will come out. You might have to ask some more questions, of course, about number of employees, years in business, and in particular, are they doing exporting? I know I've come across accountants that tell me they didn't know their clients were exporting. I find that a bit difficult to understand, but anyhow. The key thing there is have they spent more than $20,000 in export market development activities? And there are 13 main headings that they can claim that expenditure on. It's all summarised in the system. And another very important thing to remember is that the first year for an export market development grant claim can in fact be a 2-year period. So you can aggregate 2 years expenditure on export market development activities. So you have 11,000 in the first year, 16,000 in the second year. For the first year they will allow you to submit a claim of $26,000, and as long as it's all legitimate, you would receive, or your client would receive 50% of that, $13,000 as the export market development grant. I've got another question here somewhere, I'm just trying to bring it up. The question is, what is the take-up? I have been afraid of the volume of work and it will generate, and we don't have a lot of capacity. What say you? Well, that varies. I know of a firm in one of the capital cities that really embarked on Enterprise Connect, and they submitted 40 applications in a 2-month period, and they were successful in every one of them. So the total amount of money generated was 40 times $40,000, $1.6 million. The firm had submitted quotations for a fair bit of that work, and in fact they secured 52% of it. So they had over $800,000 worth of work to do. They were pleasantly surprised, and I think a bit nervous to start with. Now, a fair bit of that was marketing, because they employ a marketing person. I think you all, if you don't already have a marketing person, you're probably going to need one in the next couple of years, as the impacts of the digital disruption that Deloitte's forecasting and CCH is agreeing, and so is Proactive Accountants. Massive change is about to occur. We've got some commentary on that coming out in the next week or so that you'll get. But having a marketing person in-house can really assist you with some of these government grants. Now, I've got some more questions here. I'll just So, just to finish on that, what do I say? I wouldn't go in trying to do all your clients at once. I think that firm that did 40 in 2 months was probably been over-optimistic. You do need to be able to phase it in, do a few, and see how you go. The main thing with Enterprise Connect is contact the Enterprise Connect business advisor that operates in your area. They're all listed on their website, and have a yarn to them. Generally they claim that they haven't been overrushed by accountants, and therefore they'll probably be very responsive to you talking to them, maybe inviting them in to run a presentation to your team. I've got another question. The program searches by firm, ability to meet the qualifications. If I wanted to focus on grants that focus on supporting, say, business coaching type services, how to identify those grants? The grants are all listed within the system, so I'm just trying to go back to that. So if you go to grants, you can go through and read something on each of the grant, but it doesn't give the full details. I haven't considered the application to meet exactly what you're asking there. We've attacked this by saying, let's put the profile of the client in and then determine what grants might be applicable for that client. If you wanted to sit down and think about it, the easy answer is Enterprise Connect have got a whole range of business coaching type services that they will fund. I've done, or I'm aware of, the following: business plans, budgets and cash flow forecasts, chart of accounts reorganisation, debtors review, cash flow management review, risk management analysis, a couple other things that just slipped my mind. So it's a fair range of human resources manual. And Enterprise Connect also have a continuous improvement program. That's for a business that's already been through Enterprise Connect. I'm currently involved in doing a full management review for one of those businesses, and an update of their business plan that they last did 4 years ago. And we're also looking at undertaking a continuous improvement process review or implementation. And review, it's more an implementation, which is using some of the Kaizen, that's a Japanese methodology on waste management and avoidance of waste and wasting time and all those type of things. So this is in a manufacturing business. So they're the sort of things that they're interested in having performed in the continuous improvement program that an accountant might be able to perform. There's obviously a whole range of other things. The other area where business coaching type work really comes to the fore is in Commercialisation Australia. They have 4 grants. The one that's the obvious one for that question is what's called Skills and Knowledge, because it's covering business plans, market research, coaching on how to do a capital raising presentation, intellectual property research. And I think that's about it. So obviously the business plan, which includes budgets and cash flow forecasts, should be able to be attended by accountants. And some accountancy firms will be able to do the market research, and some will be able to do the training on making a presentation for capital. Some of you participating here today are ESS BIZTOOLS subscribers, and within ESS BIZTOOLS there's a full set of papers on getting someone ready for capital raising, so that's all set out there. The other area within Commercialisation Australia, they then have proof of concept where a client can secure a grant of up to $250,000. project management comes into play there, so it's quite normal for a project management allocation for 12 months project, which is the period the proof of concept can run for, of $20,000 to $30,000, possibly working out at around 10% of the overall figure. And that basically means making sure the client's filling in the forms right, doing the acquittals right, acting as a bit of a go-between the client and the Commercialisation Australia business advisor. And there is undoubtedly work if you happen to have a client that's going for the big Commercialisation Australia grant, which is up to $2 million on a 50% basis for early stage commercialisation. There is a significant amount of project management work there, and I believe accountants can do project management work. In my consulting business, we're doing project management work for a couple of proof of concept applicants at this stage. I hope that helps you. So to answer the last part of the question, to identify those grants, there's two of them, Enterprise Connect and Commercialisation Australia, and the other one that obviously brings in business coaching and straight accounting work is the Export Market Development Grant. I'm always quite surprised at the number of accountants that don't seem to know anything about EMDG. It's not that difficult. You set the client up with the forms at the beginning of the year. So if you haven't been anything about it and you've got exporting clients, start them off from the 1st of July and have them keep the records. There's 13 major headings that they have to abide by. Then it is fairly simple to prepare that return at the end of the year. Many of the firms that are out there tending to export market development grant applications charge between 10 and 15% of the money being generated for the client. But I look at them and think to myself, well, why aren't accountants doing that? So hopefully that gives you some idea of the range of grants that are there. And obviously some of the state government grants, the Victorian government has some voucher systems. You can, if you're in Victoria, you can get yourself registered that a client can get access to some vouchers for training and go to organisations that their government has approved, and you can give them some training. That also applies in South Australia.